She hid her real eyes to fit into a perfect world until a fearless artist saw through her disguise. But when he vanished without goodbye, she had to choose. Stay invisible forever, or finally live her truth. Have you ever looked in the mirror and felt like the person staring back wasn't really you?
Hi, I'm Tessa Crawford. At least
That's the version everyone at school thinks they know. I was adopted when I was 6 by the Crawfords. The Crawfords. Big house, big business connections, big charity galas, with sparkling dresses and cameras flashing. They gave me everything a kid could dream of. My own wing in the house, a closet that looked like a boutique, a bedroom balcony that overlooked the city lights. And I was grateful. I really was. But when you grow up in a family of perfectly blue-eyed people with magazine cover smiles, and you're the only one with brown eyes and darker features, Pepe la notice. They don't mean to be rude, but they ask, why don't you look like your parents? Are you adopted? Sometimes they whisper. By the time I started high school, I had learned something important. If you give people the version of you they expect, they stop asking questions. So every morning, I followed the same routine. Wake up, brush hair, perfect uniform, perfect smile, and then the final step. Blue contact lenses. They weren't painful. Exactly. Just uncomfortable enough to remind me all day that I wasn't being fully honest. But it worked. No one questioned me anymore. I was Tessa Crawford, the polished, confident, blue-eyed daughter of the city's favorite power couple. At school, I slid perfectly into my role. Good grades, student council, a social media feed that looked like it belonged in a fashion campaign. I knew which table to sit at, which jokes to laugh at, which parties to attend. And of course, there was Ryan Bennett, captain of everything. Son of another powerful family. Smile so bright it could power the football stadium. He'd been trying to date me since freshman year. Come on, Tess, he'd say, leaning casually against my locker. We'd be unstoppable. Think about it. Crawford and Bennett. That's practically royalty. I'd grin sweetly. Ryan. When you put it like that, I'm still going to say no. I kept it light. Always light. Because in our world, egos were delicate things, and alliances mattered. Everything was smooth, predictable, controlled. Until the day Ethan Cole walked into our classroom. You could tell he was new immediately. Not because he looked nervous, he didn't, but because he did. He looked like he belonged in our carefully curated hallway of designer backpacks and polished confidence. His jeans had paint stains. His sneakers were scuffed. He carried a beat-up sketchbook instead of a tablet. Ryan noticed him instantly. Hey, Ryan called across the room. Did a paint store explode on you? Or is that the look you're going for? A few people laughed. I laughed too. Not because it was funny, because that's what I was supposed to do. But Ethan didn't shrink. He didn't even blush. He tilted his head slightly and said calmly, genuine creativity tends to confuse people who've never tried it. The room went silent. I almost dropped my pen. No one talked to Ryan like that. Ryan's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, the teacher walked in. And just like that, the balance had shifted. Over the next week, Ryan made Ethan his favorite target. Little accidents in the hallway. Jokes that weren't really jokes. A fake social media account mocking his clothes. Through it all, Ethan stayed calm. Unbothered. Almost amused. But I noticed the shadows under his eyes. And then came the art competition. Ethan had entered a painting he'd been working on for months. I overheard him telling the art teacher about it. A child reaching toward a sky full of stars, painted in layers of color so deep it almost glowed. The morning it was supposed to be displayed. A crowd gathered in the hallway. I pushed through. The painting was destroyed. Slashed. Covered in ugly scribbles. Ryan stood nearby with his friends, pretending to be surprised. For 1 second, just one. Ethan's expression cracked. His hands trembled as he picked up the torn canvas, and something inside my perfectly constructed world broke. That afternoon, I did something reckless. I wrote him a note, an actual note, on paper. You're stronger than they know. Don't give up. I slipped it into his locker and hid behind a column like a terrible spy. When he found it, he looked around, confused. Tinny smiled. Not the polite smile he wore in class. A real one. And my heart did this weird, fluttering thing I couldn't explain. A few days later, I saw him leaving school with his paint supplies. I don't know what came over me, but I followed him. Yes, followed. Not my proudest moment. He led me to an abandoned playground surrounded by a chain-link fence. Rusted swings, faded graffiti, and then he started painting a mural on a cracked concrete wall. It was beautiful. People standing together in a storm, holding umbrellas over each other, hands reaching out to pull someone up. I stepped closer for a better look and crushed an empty soda can. He turned. I panicked, tried to hide, dropped my phone, which slid dramatically down the slide and landed right at his feet. He picked it up. "Hello," he answered cheerfully. "Thank you for calling Stalkerzaris. I wanted the ground to swallow me." When I finally stepped out from behind the slide, my face felt like it was on fire. "I wasn't stalking you," I said quickly. "He was just taking a shortcut through a fenced playground with no trespassing signs." "Okay, fine. I followed you. Just please don't tell anyone at school." He studied me for a second. Then he laughed. "Relax, princess. Your secret's safe with me." Princess. No one had ever said it like that before. Teasing, not worshipping. He gestured to the mural. "Want to see it up close?" That's how it started. We began meeting there after school, talking about everything and nothing. About art, about music, about feeling out of place. One evening, sitting on the rusty swings, I told him the truth. "I was adopted," I said quietly. "My parents give me everything, but sometimes I feel like I'm just part of their charity portfolio." He was quiet for a moment. "Is that why you hide your real eyes?" I froze. "What? The blue doesn't quite match." He sighed gently. "And you rub them when you think no one's looking." No one had noticed before. My hands shook as I removed the contacts. I blinked up at him. He smiled softly. "They're beautiful. The gold flecks. That's the best part." My chest felt too small for my heart, and then he leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. For the first time, I felt completely seen. But real doesn't stay hidden forever. When Ethan tried sitting with my friends at lunch, when he tried stepping into my world, Ryan-esque smile disappeared. The next morning, Ethan's banner for the school formal was destroyed. Again. This time, Ethan didn't look hurt. He looked certain. And the next day, he didn't show up. No messages. No mural. No Etha. And for the first time in years, I looked in the mirror, blue contacts in hand, and wondered if pretending had just cost me the only real thing I'd ever had. What had he decided, and was I already too late? Ethan was gone. At first I told myself he was just sick, maybe grounded, maybe ignoring me because he was mad. But after 3 days of silence, something inside me knew the truth. I went to his foster home with my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear myself think. His foster mom opened the door with kind, tired eyes. "Oh, sweetheart," she said gently. Ethan left. This afternoon, he said he needed a fresh start. A fresh start. The words felt like someone had quietly pressed pause on my world. "Did he say anything about me?" I asked. She disappeared for a second and came back holding a folded piece of paper. "He left this for you." My hands trembled as I opened it. It was a sketch of me. Not the polished version from Instagram. Not the blue-eyed girl from charity galas. The real me. Brown eyes. Gold flecks. A soft smile I didn't even know I had. Underneath, in his messy handwriting, it said, "Don't let fear choose for you. You're more than what they expect you to be. Live your truth. I cried the whole way home. Not loud, dramatic crying, just quiet tears that wouldn't stop. Because deep down, I knew away. Hadn't he left because of Ryan? He'd left because of me. Because I had asked him to fit into a world that didn't fit him. That night, I stood in front of my mirror for a long time. The blue contact lenses sat in my palm. They suddenly looked small. Silly. I slowly placed them back in their case. The next morning, I went to school as myself. No disguise. No filter. Just brown eyes and a nervous heartbeat. The first person to notice was Ryan. He stared at me across the cafeteria like I'd shown up wearing pajamas. "New look?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Old look," I replied. "Just finally decided to keep it." He shrugged like it didn't matter. But I saw the confusion flicker across his face. Then he laughed loudly. "So where's your little artist friend? Run off to find another wall to scribble on." The cafeteria went quiet. For once, I didn't calculate the social consequences. I didn't think about alliances. I didn't think about reputations. "You're wrong," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "And you're a bully. Kindness isn't weakness, it's strength. And if you can't understand that, I actually feel sorry for you." You could hear a fork drop. Ryan opened his mouth to fire back, and nothing came out. For the first time since I'd known him, he didn't have a comeback. And then something unexpected happened. Someone clapped. Then another, and another. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a movie scene, but it was real. That afternoon, I slipped a small note into someone's locker. "You're not alone." The next day, I left another. "You matter more than you think." At first, it was just me. Then, a week later, I noticed a note on my locker. "Whoever you are, thank you." Soon, they were everywhere. Tucked into textbooks, taped onto bathroom mirrors, scribbled in chalk near the entrance. Teachers joined in. The drama club performed short skits about empathy. Students started sitting with people who usually ate alone. The energy in the hallways changed. It felt lighter, warmer. Ryan still rolled his eyes at it all, but even he stopped making loud jokes. It's hard to be the villain when the entire story shifts. I never told anyone I started it. It wasn't about credit. It was about courage. And slowly, I started to feel something new. Confidence. Not the polished, practiced version. The quiet kind. 6 months passed. College applications. Final exams. Life moving forward whether you're ready or not. I still thought about Ethan. Every time I passed the abandoned playground, every time I saw someone sketching in a notebook, every time I caught sunlight in my own eyes. One afternoon, I was riding the subway downtown when I saw it. A mural stretched across the station wall. A girl with brown eyes, releasing butterflies into the sky. The details were unmistakable. The gold flecks in her eyes. The softness of her smile. Into corner, small but clear, were 2 letters. Easy, my heart skipped. He was still out there, still painting hope into the world. And maybe he'd been watching from a distance. I got off at the next stop, without even thinking. I followed the streets like instinct was guiding me. A few blocks later, I slowed. Up ahead, someone stood on a ladder, painting another wall. Overalls splattered with color. Messy hair catching the sunlight. I froze. He climbed down, stepping back to examine his work. As if he felt me staring, he turned. Our eyes met, and there it was. That smile, the one that made my heart do that ridiculous, uncontrollable flutter. He looked surprised, then something softer, warmer. I walked closer, my pulse racing. "Nice mural," I said, trying to sound casual. He laughed softly. "Nice eyes," he replied. For a second, neither of us spoke. There were 1,000 things I wanted to say. "I'm sorry." I was scared. "You are right." Instead, I said, "You left." He looked down at the paintbrush in his hand. I needed to figure out who I was without fighting someone else's battle. "And did you?" He nodded. "Yeah. Turns out I don't want to shrink for anyone. My throat tightened. I don't want to shrink either, I admitted. He studied me carefully, like he was reading a sketch only he could see. You look different, he said. I am. A small smile tugged at his lips. Good. The city noise faded into the background. It felt like standing at the edge of something new. Hopeful, terrifying, real. So, he said finally, brushing paint off his hands, are you still following me around abandoned places? I laughed. Only the important ones. He stepped closer, close enough that I could see flecks of paint on his cheek, close enough that I could feel that same spark from the playground. Maybe, he said quietly. This time we walk side by side. Before I could answer, a voice called his name from across the street. I turned. A group of young artists stood there, waving him over. One of them handed him a flyer. He glanced at it. 10 bucks at me. There's a community art project starting next month, he said, traveling city to city. Big walls, big stories. My heart skipped. That sounds amazing. It is, he said softly, and they asked me to lead it. Lead it. This wasn't the scared new kid anymore. This was someone who had found his direction. He looked at me with a question in his eyes, the kind that doesn't need words. Stay. Go. Choose. I thought about the girl in the mirror. The one who used to hide. The one who was finally brave enough to be seen. And just as I opened my mouth to answer, my phone buzzed. A message from my parents. Big news. We need to talk about your future. Tonight. I looked at Ethan. At the mural, at the road stretching ahead. And suddenly, I realized something. Growing up isn't about choosing what's safe. It's about choosing what's true. But what if the two don't lead to the same place? And what if the biggest decision of my life was only just beginning?